In the first 3 parts of our series, we looked into Rage Against the Machine's meteoric rise to pop stardom, the impetus for their explosive debut album cover, and touched on the violent and racist American imperialism that inspired the band to make some of the most scathingly critical music the Billboard charts have ever seen. In Part 4, we delve into their sophomore release, the aptly titled Evil Empire, and the comprehensive reading list that the band provides within the album's liner notes. Now, unfortunately, I've been unable to find a full photo of said liner notes, and we here at MSTW cannot financially or spiritually afford to buy a physical copy of the album from Amazon. I really can't find it anywhere else. I've found a few different lists, but we're going to go off the Goodreads.com offering of 130 titles. To be honest, I'm probably going to skip a few. Check the description for the full list, including links to independent sources to purchase each book. Or join our Patreon and head over to our Discord library. Or buy some merch. I got laid off, so I guess I'm forced to monetize what we do here. Still no stimulus check. Ain't capitalism grand? The list starts off with the classic George Orwell novel, Animal Farm, which we all know is
a blatant attack on totalitarianism.
And not just a criticism of communism itself. All unjust hierarchies lead to corruption. Pigs will be pigs no matter what system is implemented. The only just system is one where the people act in a unified manner against all forms of oppression. Next is Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, the 1886 book that infamously promotes staunch individualism over following societal norms. Societal norms like, religious fundamentalism, the need to constantly produce, the traditional family unit, and class systems. The will to power is personal and subconscious, and does not rely on petty dominion over others, nor does the process of becoming God require the adherence to prosperity gospel. But yeah, keep telling yourself the book was written as an excuse to act like a selfish prick all the time. 2 works appear by the Michael Jordan of modern revolutionaries, Che Guevara. I mean, come on. We all know this smooth-ass motherfucker would have thrown down at least a little bit of money on his team before a siege or something, if he had the opportunity. Wait, that's also why Michael Jordan retired. You know that, right? The first time, remember, to go play baseball? Yeah, anyway, his most popular work, Guerrilla Warfare, details the methods used to bring about the Cuban Revolution, while the lesser-known A New Society, Reflections for Today's World, published posthumously in 1996, covers the more philosophical elements of his ideology. Another, more readily available text from the same era, Man and Socialism, echoes many similar sentiments.
Let me say, with the risk of appearing ridiculous, that the true revolutionary is guided by strong feelings of love. It is impossible to think of an authentic revolutionary without this quality. This is perhaps one of the great dramas of a leader. He must combine an impassioned spirit with a cold mind and make painful decisions without flinching. Our vanguard revolutionaries must idealize their love for the people, for the most hallowed causes, and make it one and indivisible. They cannot descend with small doses of daily affection to the terrain where ordinary men put their love into practice. Che Guevara.
Other contributions from Latin American contemporaries include the amazingly titled First World Ha Ha Ha, Basta, Land and the Zapatista Rebellion in Chiapas, Always a Rebel, Ricardo Flores Magón and the Mexican Revolution, Chicano Politics, Reality and Promise, 1940 to 1990, Zapata of Mexico, Fidel and Religion, and an interview with Chairman Gonzalo, the chairman of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Peru. Various communist works and commentaries pop up throughout the list, such as Karl Marx's Capital and Marx's Capital for Beginners, the Marx-Engels Reader, The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State by Frederick Engels, The State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin, and Marxism and the Oppression of Women Toward a Unitary Theory by Lisa Vogel. Speaking of the band's vastly underappreciated feminine influence, we have Women, Race and Class by Angela Davis, Backlash, The Undeclared War Against American Women by Susan Faludi, This Bridge Called My Back by Cherry L. Moraga, Chicana Falsa by Michelle Serros, God Dies by the Nile by Nawal El Sadawi, Promissory Notes by Sonia Crux and Raina Rapp, and The Challenge of Local Feminisms, Women's Movements in the Global Perspective by Amrita Basu. I need to read all of these. And in what may be a surprise to some, we also have Gay New York, Gender, Urban Culture, and the Making of the Gay Male World, 1890 to 1940 by George Chauncey, and Power at Play, Sports and the Problem of Masculinity by Michael A. Messner. Scattered amongst the radical political theory is Andy Warhol's Popism, books on Salvador Dali and M.C. Escher, plus classic novels like Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, Ellison's Invisible Man, Miller's Tropic of Cancer, and Neruda's Odes to Opposites. There are also fictional yet politically inspired works by James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, respectively, as well as titles from Harriet Beecher Stowe, James Joyce, Carlos Castaneda, William S. Burroughs, Ernest Hemingway, Norman Mailer, and W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm really not a big fiction fan and need to get into a bunch of these titles. Oates to Opposite looks dope, and Baldwin and Morrison, of course, are truly powerful.
What is it you wanted me to reconcile myself to? I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You've always told me it takes time. It has taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brother's and my sister's time, my niece's and my nephew's time. How much time do you want for your progress?
You can't own a human being. You can't lose what you don't own. Suppose you did own them. Could you really love somebody who is absolutely nobody without you? You really want somebody like that? Somebody who falls apart when you walk out the door? You don't, do you? And neither do they. You're turning over your whole life to them. Your whole life. And if it means so little to you that you can just give it away, hand it to them, then why should it mean any more to them? They can't value you more than you value yourself. Toni Morrison.
The Teachings of Don Juan is an excellent layman's introduction to shamanism. Definitely has opened a lot of white people's eyes up over the years. Enjoy some William S. Burroughs with a glass of cheap whiskey and your favorite Elliott Smith record. Despite the many luminaries and thought leaders that grace this epic catalog, two artists stand out as both deeply influential to your narrator and Rage Against the Machine themselves: Bob Marley and Miles Davis. In Bob Marley, Spirit Dancer, photographer Bruce W. Talman documents the reggae star's humble rise to spiritual leadership before his untimely death in 1981. It's an interesting choice, being a short book of mostly photos, but captures a time in history where the public was wide-eyed and idealistic, and gods seemed to walk among us. I read the autobiography of Miles Davis when I was about 16 years old, and it changed my life in ways I continue to recognize 20 years later. For the unfamiliar, Miles Davis is on many people's jazz Mount Rushmore, a revolutionary trumpet player turned band leader that innovated popular music time and time again from the late 1940s until his death in 1991. As much as I love Kind of Blue, Sketches of Spain, and In a Silent Way, the budding anarchist in me loved the erratic yet orchestrated madness of Davis's electric period. From 1970 to 1975, Miles would experiment with funk, rock, and an eclectic array of instruments to create a series of recordings that defied genre and often logic. His adventurous vision and uncompromising approach was truly inspirational and gave me yet another example of how true visionaries push the boundaries of society and their own consciousness simultaneously. There were two more books that inspired yours truly to become the consciousness-exploring, radical malcontent warrior shaman you see before you today. The first comes from a contemporary of Rage, with Marilyn Manson's The Long Hard Road Out of Hell. This one really needs a reread and a video of its own, so that'll probably happen soon. But just know that your boy was wearing nail polish, spiked belts, and Doc Martens to hip-hop shows before any of you fucks.
Not this little fuck! None of you little fucks out there!
The other was the autobiography of Malcolm X. What I love about Malcolm is his razor-sharp observational skills and his severe distaste for bias of any kind. He is ready and willing to reject the old and investigate the new without ever losing objectivity or the present sense of an ongoing dialectic. Contemporaries of Malcolm can be found throughout the list, such as Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, George Jackson, Kwame Nkrumah, and Frantz Fanon. There are 4 books on the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya, which Tom Morello's father was directly involved in, becoming Kenya's first UN ambassador. As we move further out onto the fringes, we find Abby Hoffman's Steal This Book and William Powell's The Anarchist Cookbook. These two titles, written by crazy-ass white boys, mind you, can and have convinced bougie white American homeowners that anarchism is nothing but an excuse to commit crime for decades. The former title I have not spent much time with, but judging by the table of contents, I'm fairly confident in the previous assessment. The latter, I somehow bought at Newbury Comics in Harvard Square when I was like 14, and proceeded to educate myself in all the wrong aspects of the revolution. I can't think of this book without thinking of all the times I spent at Metropolitan State Hospital. Not like as a patient, but pretty close. an abandoned mental institution in Waltham, Massachusetts, where angry suburban kids like us could pretty openly break windows, spray paint, start fires, and play our own version of Wacky Shack.
Wacky Shack!
With little to no consequences. As I mentioned in the 1999 video, I knew kids who literally kept coffee cans of homemade napalm in their locker. But we were mostly content with just writing graffiti and making Molotovs with the small amount of 151 we could afford to offer the gods of anarchy. Hey, I sat around the corner from a liquor store for at least 2 hours to get that bottle of 151. I'm drinking every sip of it. At this point, I'd like to mention once again that at any point, an adult could have come in and said, "Hey, I see you're very smart, and also very angry at the system. Would you like to learn about what anarchism really is, and what your favorite band is actually talking about?" Rules for Radicals, a pragmatic primer for realistic radicals by Saul D. Alinsky, or What is Anarchism by Alexander Berkman are great places to start. No? Nothing? But you just want me to either go to college or join the workforce, and I'm supposed to trust you? Why? Let's be real. Child rearing over the past 100 years has devolved into providing the basic physical resources to allow us to develop our natural talents, with any other type of attention being a privileged luxury. Unless you're rich and white and Christian, but, boomers, the first generation ever to say, you know what, the next generation doesn't deserve that much. Well, here's an okay boomer. The King of Ling makes 6 appearances on the list, more than any other author. Other works critical of U.S. policy and culture include 2 classics from Howard Zinn and Herbert Marcuse, respectively, 2 books on media censorship, and 2 from author Jonathan Kozol on U.S. schools. The list also features Killing Hope, U.S. military and CIA interventions since World War II by William Blum, The Culture of Narcissism, American Life in an Age of Diminishing Expectations by Christopher Lasch, and the book that brought legal cannabis into the public discourse, The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Herrera. Jesus, Lucifer Christ, there's a lot of books on here. I'm tired, let's wrap this up. Einstein? Check. Thoreau? Check. Other scientific criticisms include How the Other Half Lives by Jacob A. Rice, The Mismeasure of Man by Stephen Jay Gould, and The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. Yep, The Lorax is the only direct criticism of environmental abuse on this list, unless you consider, like the abuse of your fellow man environmental abuse, which you should. That said, the book really doesn't take into account the fact that the factory would not be literally run by the family, as is pretty definitively stated. The source of the labor would most likely be the nearby, seemingly sentient beings that the Lorax eventually sends away. Also worth noting that the oppressor in the story manages to pull off body shaming, ageism, racism, classism, and tone policing in just 2 couplets when describing his challenger's attributes. Nice guy. What does come through is how much of a cunt this Once-There motherfucker is. It's like he didn't even learn his lesson. He just lives like a hermit with his riches in a post-apocalyptic hellscape of his own design. Kinda sounds like what the developers of the Dakota Access Pipeline are trying to do. Well, I'm spent. I missed a few, but hopefully they were all written by white people. What's interesting to me about this list is I didn't really get into Evil Empire as a kid, it being constantly played on the radio, and my friend group avoiding anything remotely pop at the time. Underground hip-hop and electronic music of a similar but less overt countercultural stance adorned my CD tower, and even when I was able to attend the infamously short-lived Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang concert at Great Woods in Mansfield, Massachusetts. I think that was the first concert I ever went to. Yeah. Their headlining set was more of an afterthought after the contact high that is seeing the entire Wu-Tang Clan perform. Thanks for watching. We were greatly inspired to make this video by the Artisan Geek, a lovely booktuber who was recommended to us because somehow the algorithm actually works for us? I mean, that's true, but will saying that help us get recommended more? Please? Here we are, YouTube, just creating some good old wholesome booktube content. Yep. That's all. Good night and good luck.